you for joining us to celebrate the launch of Lee Gutkind's thoroughly engaging memoir, My Last 8,000 Days, with our virtual pre-recorded program. Hello, I'm Stephanie Flom, Executive Director of Pittsburgh Arts and Lectures. Welcome. Today's program is part of our Made Local series, produced in partnership with the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh. Thank you to the library and to Creative Nonfiction for partnering with us on today's program, and to White Whale Bookstore, where you can purchase a signed copy of Lee's book. Lee Gutkind is the author and editor of more than 30 books, including You Can't Make This Stuff Up, The Complete Guide to Writing Creative Nonfiction, Almost Human, Making Robots Think, and the award-winning Many Sleepless Nights, The World of Organ Transplantation. Spotlighted in Vanity Fair magazine as the godfather behind creative nonfiction, Lee is its most active advocate and practitioner. He founded Creative Nonfiction Literary Journal and was instrumental in starting the first MFA program in creative nonfiction at the University of Pittsburgh. He holds the position of professor at the School for the Future of Innovation in Society at Arizona State University. It is my pleasure to welcome Lee Gutkind.
So, good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, whenever you're watching this. My name is Lee Gutkind, and we're going to talk today about life after 70, well, also before 70, and my book, my first memoir, My Last 8,000 Days. And I want to thank Pittsburgh Arts and Lectures. It's really an honor to be part of what has been for many years a very distinguished series of editors and writers. So I'm really happy to be here. And co-sponsors, Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh and the Creative Nonfiction Foundation. I'm pretty excited. So let me tell you a little bit about my book. It's kind of about me turning 70. But long before 70, I was, to tell you the truth, really kind of getting freaked out about aging and what people would think about me as I was getting older, and myself. Will I be able to continue the frantic pace of my life that had been so much a part of my life? So when I was 40, I did a really dumb thing. I wish I could take it back, but that's the way it is. I called up all my friends and I asked them. No, I really told them to ignore my birthdays from now on. No cards, no letters, no emails, no telephone calls. I wanted to live the day. Every one of my birthdays, January 3rd, by the way, I wanted to live all of my birthdays as if it was just another day, so that I could just move forward and not have to pay attention to the fact that maybe because I was aging, I was just kind of fading away. And I didn't want to fade away. And I'm an incredibly obsessed worker. This is kind of how I have, I've written 17 books. I teach at a large university. I'm a full professor of writing, and I have started this magazine, Creative Nonfiction, the largest magazine and the first magazine to feature creative nonfiction or narrative nonfiction exclusively. So I work really hard. And I think I've worked really hard from the absolute beginning of my life, because I always thought I was kind of an outcast. You know, I went to Taylor Alderdice High School, which is in Pittsburgh. And the thing of it is, when I graduated on the fifth of my class, I tried to get into a college, and there were no community colleges there then. So I just didn't know what else to do. I couldn't get into any college. And so the only thing else I could do was enlist in the military. And in the military, something terrific happened. When I was at Alderdice, when I was growing up, I weighed 225 pounds, pretty fat, pretty heavy. And I was picked on a lot, and I felt really bad. But in the military, I learned about push-ups and sit-ups and not eating 16 meals a day. And I slimmed down pretty much to the weight I am now. So when I came back to Pittsburgh after the military, I was obsessed for showing the people in my high school and showing my family and showing myself that I could really be something special. And so I've been working real hard most of my life in order to try to write and to be something special. But as I got older, I kind of felt that I was slipping, just slipping a little bit, or that people thought I might be slipping. So that's kind of the way in which the book starts out, with this idea that that aging kind of affects the way in which you work and or want to work, and the perception of aging. People, I can tell now when people look at me, they assume right away that I'm retired. I got silver, gray hair, whatever. I can't tell you how many people ask me if I'm retired, or I can't tell you how many people ask me how old I am. Well, what's it their business? You wouldn't ask a 32-year-old very often. It's how old they are. So anyway, that's kind of how I approached the book. And I started the book on my 70th birthday. And on my 70th birthday, I almost pulled a shimmy. I almost pulled a shimmy. Now, Shimmy was a cousin of mine, and he did really well in Pittsburgh. I don't remember what kind of business he was in, but in his early 50s, he left Pittsburgh and retired to Miami Beach and lived a life of pretty much fun and leisure. He played a little bit of golf, but what he really did, Shimmy, by the way, is Yiddish for Sam. And and when you're called Shimmy, you are like you're kind of a guy who has a little pizzazz in his life. And Shimmy loved to play the piano. He was a dancer as good, I'm telling you, as Fred Astaire. And he spent a lot of his time performing at different places like the Jewish Community Center. And one day, leaving, he wore tap shoes, by the way, black and white tap shoes. He was a really cool guy, except I think he pushed it a little bit too far. And one day, when Shimmy was 88 years old, and he was driving home after dancing and singing and pianoing at the Jewish Community Center, maybe he was still listening to music, and maybe he was tapping those saddle shoes on his gas pedal. But honestly, he lost control of the car and he ran into two people waiting for a bus, which is probably what Shimmy should have been doing, being on a bus. And he killed those people. And Shimmy soon never danced again, never sang, as far as I know, and he soon passed away. And I always thought in my life, as I got older, this kind of feeling of pulling a shimmy, if I screwed up too much, especially because I might be getting a little bit too old, I might not be on my game as much as others, that I was always fearing this idea of pulling a shimmy. And on this 70th birthday, I walked up to Starbucks. By the way, I am here in the office of Creative Nonfiction, my magazine. If you know anything about Pittsburgh, Creative Nonfiction is in Shadyside. And Shadyside is a really cool place in Pittsburgh. And it used to be kind of the Georgetown in the 1960s and 70s of Pittsburgh. And I've been here all my life. I was a beatnik in the 50s and early 60s. I was a hippie in the late 60s and early 70s. In the 80s and 90s, I was a Tweedy college professor, all the roles I was playing. Anyway, and so our office is not too far from Walnut Street, which is where the main drag of Shadyside. And I'm a man of habit. I get up every morning and I write for 3 or 4 hours. I don't answer the phone. I don't look at my emails. I just kind of go at it, and have been doing this for a long, long time. And the first thing I do after I get up is walk up the street. I walk Walnut. This is only the first time I walk Walnut. I usually walk Walnut once or 5 or 6 times a day. But 6 a.m., I'm at the Starbucks at on Walnut Street, or right near Walnut Street, and they know me so well that they often have my venti, dark, no room, with a stopper and a sleeve ready for me when I walk into the door. It's a habit I have. But this morning, I walked into Starbucks, and I was the only person there. And I walked up to the counter, and Tony was there. Tony didn't look too good. There was something going on. And as he was pouring my coffee, he kind of staggered a little bit. And then suddenly, as I was standing there, he toppled over. It was like watching a tree fall after a lumberjack had chopped it down. He just toppled over. And suddenly, I didn't know what to do. I got to tell you, I really pride myself, or think I always know what to do. I tell people everywhere, anytime I talk to them, action. You got to do action. You got to move quickly. You got to take advantage of the situation. But Tony dropped, and I couldn't move. I couldn't move because I started thinking about the consequences if Tony, if Tony was okay, or if someone would come into the store, if I ran around the counter near where the cash register is, if someone would think I was looting the cash register. This was so embarrassing and so it was kind of quite frightening for me. And I thought back to a time when I did indeed much younger. I was in my late 20s, and I was writing my first book, traveling around the country on a motorcycle, and 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 my friend Bert, who was with me, was very depressed. He had wanted to live the motorcycle dream with me. But he had, in order to do that, to leave his family and to abandon a business that he had and go on the road with me, if only just for a few weeks. It was something we had been talking about for a long time. But he couldn't take it. He was very depressed. And as we were in our hotel room one night, Bert suddenly took a razor and slashed his wrist. And it wasn't terrible, but it was bleeding, and it scared me to death. And I jumped up and I grabbed the razor and I threw it across the room. And I ran to the office and said I needed to borrow a car. And I borrowed a car, and I went to Bert to the hospital, and the bleeding was stopped rather quickly, and Bert was okay, except he was humiliated and embarrassed. But I did it. I moved quickly. My 28-year-old brain could take action and move forward. And there I was. There I was in Starbucks, Tony falling to the ground, and maybe 10, maybe 15, maybe 20 seconds, I could not move. And and I kind of knew, by the way, I knew it happened. Tony had been taken to the hospital 3 or 4 weeks before because he had a seizure. And I knew that because I had seen the ambulance there that morning when I made my first trip to Starbucks. And yet I thought, what would people say? And besides which, what do I do about taking care of someone with a seizure? What happens if I do the wrong thing? Should I slap him in the face? Should I wake him up? What should I do? And so I froze there for a long time before I jumped up, did the right thing, put a towel under his head, called 911, and things got straightened out. But the fact of the matter is that really shook me up. And it was not a great day for me anyway. My 70th year was kind of a tsunami. My 70th year, my two best friends died, one from cancer, and the other suddenly in the middle of the night on a dark road run over by a car. My two best friends. And then 5 years before my 70th birthday, my mom, my most trusted friend and advisor, my mom passed away when she was 94 years old. And that was only 5 days. And 5 days later, it was my birthday that day. So it was a really upsetting day. And and this business about aging, about not being, I wasn't afraid of dying. I was just afraid of not counting anymore. And so aging, it's a problem. Ageism is a word we use these days. And I was fighting ageism long before the word came to be used right now. So I steadied myself. But that's essentially the situation of what my book is all about. My life. And it's been a challenge to write about my life because in all of my other books, I have written about other people. I've dug deep into, I've immersed myself in their lives for not months, but for years and years, in order to show my readers what their world was like and what they thought about what they were doing: organ transplantation, baseball umpires, roboticists, veterinarians, pediatricians. I spent most of my life immersing in other people's lives, myself in other people's lives. So here I am. And I'm shaky about being older. I'm shaky about what people will think of me, will have confidence in me, and all these things just kind of oh, oh, to use an old phrase that people don't use much anymore. I was freaked out. Okay. But I have worked real hard, as you'll see in the book, to kind of make the transformation, to kind of be a new and different Lee. But I almost that day, I almost pulled the shimmy. So let me read you a little bit from my book. I mean, gee whiz, I'm a writer, right? I got to do some reading. So I'm going to read you a little bit from my book, and so you can get the sense of what I am trying to do, my tone, my voice, and you'll see that this is not a sad book. I mean, I am now at 77 years old, one of the happiest guys in the world. I have kind of turned my life around and gotten rid of this feeling that being old means you don't count anymore. I know I count. I also know that when you're my age, you got to count a lot louder in order to make other people listen and pay attention to you. So let me read you a little bit from my book, Right After Tony. On my way home from Starbucks that day, I took a deep breath. Okay, it's over, and you've handled it, right? No more hesitation. This isn't who you are. Never again. And that helped until I realized that what I just said, I said out loud. I was talking to myself as if I were two people, which is okay, I guess. Lots of people talk to themselves, but not in public, for God's sake. This seems to happen more frequently as I get older. For instance, I might leave Starbucks after having a casual conversation with someone in the coffee line. I say goodbye, exit out the door, and then I continue the conversation aloud as I walk up the street. The sound of my voice carrying both sides of the conversation eventually startles me, and I say, also out loud, oh, damn, you better stop this. And I do, until I begin to think of something else that's on my mind. And my resolve to shut up fades, and the dialogue in my head gradually flows out of my mouth and into the street. And again, I have to shut myself up. Stop talking, I command. And again, for God's sake, out loud. Sometimes I express in public out loud and for no particular reason and to no related reference, nonsense, total nonsense, which sticks in my head for days on end, like the lyrics of a song you hear on the radio or music as on an elevator, which you cannot, as hard as you try, shake. That day after Tony was whisked away in another ambulance as I was walking home, I said to no one in particular, except maybe to the sidewalk or the storefronts on the street, what do you think of Mr. Skink? Now, why did I say that? Who is Mr. Skink? But this Mr. Skink business became a noise in my head I couldn't shake. All day long, during my feverish runs, and at home, drinking glass after glass after glass of wine before dinner, and then more after dinner, alone at night, I repeatedly asked myself the question of the moment: what do you think of Mr. Skink? I stopped asking myself the question after a few days, but the Mr. Skink mystery, why he popped into my head, has forever eluded me. And he does come back to confuse and taunt me from time to time. Maybe I know Mr. Skink. And maybe I'm also slipping. Maybe it's just a little. Maybe, perhaps, Mr. Skink is me. Soon after I got home, after watching the medics pack Tony into his ambulance, I had an important meeting to attend. I was making a presentation to a large foundation interested in funding the literary magazine I founded and edit. So I had worked all the previous night to get prepared. That's what I do. I prepare my ass off in secret so it looks spontaneous, this natural, ready for anything Lee or me. But just as I was about ready to leave my house and get on the road early, so as not to be late for the meeting, things went wrong. And my mania to make certain I had put myself and all the loose ends together got the best of me. For one thing, I couldn't zip up my jacket. I was at the door. I was heading for my car in the garage behind my house when the zipper stuck to the fabric of my jacket and I began fighting to get it loose. Well, really, you know how that goes. The more you tug, the more it sticks and resists. I was making some progress, but then I dropped my car keys. Seemed like I was dropping everything I touched: coins and keys and pencils and pens. How did my fingers become so smooth, as if there was none of that gluey stick to it grip left in my fingers anymore? The week before, I dropped my credit card while paying for items at the grocery, so I bent down to scoop it up. But then I dropped it again. And when I bent down a second time, the damn plastic seemed laminated to the ground. It wouldn't budge. So I wedged my fingernail under the corner of the credit card, or tried to, but my fingernails were too short, and I tried 3 times before I snagged it, and then I dropped it again. Eventually, I gave up on the zipper, pulled the jacket over my head like a sweater in order to examine closely the stuck zipper, to see and then gently but stubbornly tug the material loose from it. But first, the sweater jacket caught on my eyeglasses, which I had been, frankly, too lazy to remove, and my glasses clattered to the floor, necessitating another bend. Oh, I felt like such a fool, so lame, one thing after another. Thank God I was alone, but you can't do anything about this stuff except to yell and swear out loud, which was not really too helpful. When those annoyances happen, they just don't end. You get off their game, lose your confidence. At least I do. Even when I had my keys in my hand, my jacket zipped up neatly, and I was ready to go out the door, I felt unsure. Did I have everything I would need for my meeting? Notebook? Yeah. Laptop? Yes. File folder? Well, maybe I wouldn't need it, but maybe I would. It had some relevant papers, and I didn't want to rely on my memory if I was asked any questions. I needed the folder. I needed it just in case. So I went back to the second floor of my house, where my office is located, and on the way to the office, I adjusted the thermostat. I wasn't going to be home for half a day, no need to have the heat running full blast, but then I realized I would probably need to pee sometime during the middle of the meeting, and the last thing I wanted was for my potential funders to believe that my kidneys were failing. Even though I had visited the bathroom right before I began wrestling with my stuck zipper, I detoured into the bathroom one more time. I relieved myself for the second time in about 15 minutes. Better safe than sorry, right? Then retraced my steps downstairs and headed for the door. And then I stopped. I stopped. Something was not right. Then I remembered the file folder I had gone up to my office to retrieve. So I went back upstairs for the folder, but then I realized I hadn't shaved that morning, which was okay. I don't have to shave every day, but I wanted to remember to shave later or the next day. So after I retrieved the folder, I took my razor from the bathroom and placed it on top of the stairs to remind me to shave when I returned. Now I have learned that this reminder device works. Whenever I think of something I need to do, I place an item somewhere in the house that would jog my memory, and I keep it there until I fulfill whatever task I needed to do. On the TV table in my living room, beside the front door, I will place empty packages of English muffins or sweet and low, whatever to remember to buy, or letters to mail, checks to deposit. My mania to not forget is relentless. I don't want anyone to realize that I'm slipping. No one except me, of course, but I will not slip in public. I need to remain viable, no matter how hard and how much work I have to do. This doesn't happen every day, but when little things go wrong, angst and anxiety take over. And I feel so out of control. It takes a while to settle down and regroup. And I always do manage to get things together and get myself back into gear, moving from my private persona to the way I am when I'm playing the part of the public me. But then I was running late for my meeting. I had to hurry. I left the house and I locked the door. I put my keys in my left pocket by habit so I'd remember where they are. Now I have this pocket ritual. Left pocket for keys, right pocket for money, and a Listerine Cool Mint pocket pack. Those thin wafers to get mouthwash, to gel wafers of gel mouthwash, frankly, because I'm afraid of having what people call old man's breath. I've heard people say he looks like death warmed over and he smells like it too. And I know. I have smelled what they mean on old geezers, like they are sour and musty. So I continually coat my tongue with these wafers before I meet up with someone. You can never be too careful at my age, you know. You must be relentless in playing the game to be convincing. So I headed off, late but finally in meeting the public mode, ready for anything, ready for anything, thinking and going over in my mind what I needed to talk about, and at the same time considering how to get where I was going because these days I can't remember even the most familiar streets sometimes. I must concentrate carefully or I will end up somewhere else or get the entire endeavor confused. The wrong meeting time on the right day or the right meeting time on the wrong day. This has happened. But in the end, the meeting with the foundation went well. I was in first class Super Lee shape. I was amusing. I was insightful. I was thoughtful and persuasive. What a guy, they must have thought, of course, considering his age. And I got some funding. So you see, I'm okay in public, more than okay. It's when I'm in private and alone, unwatched, overthinking everything that I sometimes lose my moxie. And Tony, it turned out he was okay too. He returned to work the following day, and when I walked into Starbucks that next morning, he was all over me, hugging and thanking and complimenting me about my fast action, my quick thinking on his behalf. I listened and I played along. I did. But he did not know what I knew, that it was all I could do to muster the strength and the will to help him. I had barely escaped pulling a shimmy. And that's what happened the day I turned 70. Now I want to tell you, if I can, no more reading, but I do want to tell you about a time in my book when I did pull a terrible shimmy. One of the joys of my life turned into one of my biggest mistakes. Now I'm a writer, as you know, and pretty obsessed, as I have said a couple of times. And but I'm always looking for a book. We writers are always looking for the perfect book, a book that would not only make an impact, make a connection with as many readers in the world, but make you feel satisfied and comfortable, make you feel like what you are writing is something that can be shared and kept in print, kept afloat for long past you're no longer writing or even alive. It's Holocaust Memorial Day. It's 2008, maybe 2009. And I read this article in the New York Times about a rabbi named Menachem Eulis. But he wasn't the regular traditional rabbi. He was a rabbi who didn't have a congregation. He was a rabbi who was also obsessed. He was obsessed about hunting Torahs, finding Torahs that had been stolen and desecrated during the Holocaust or before that time by the Germans and by the Russians and taken away from the heritage of the families and the synagogues who once owned them. And he had this great Torah that he had saved that was being presented to a large synagogue congregation in New York on Holocaust Memorial Day, and that really was the reason he was. Featured in that newspaper in that day. And I thought, what a guy! People called him the Torah hunter, and he had rescued so many Torahs for the past 20 years for no compensation whatsoever. It was quite amazing. And he seemed like a really terrific guy. He owned a bookstore in Washington, D.C., loved his email. Menachem, his first name, everybody called him Menachem at jewbook.com. I just thought he sounded so wonderful. And before I reached out to him, I Googled him. There were stories about the Torahs that he had saved from all over the world, Russia and Germany, and Torahs he found for Jews in Uganda. There are Jews in Uganda. He found them, and he was a sofer. So as a rabbi, he was able to repair Torahs and write Torahs, as well as give them back to where they belong. And so I called him, and at first he was really resistant. At first he said, "No, I'm too busy. I'm traveling all over the world rescuing Torahs, and I have no interest in talking to a writer or giving my time to a writer." But I persisted, and in fact, I told him that I was going both to Jerusalem that summer and to and that I might be able to help him do research. I was also going to Auschwitz. And that kind of got him interested. And what really got him interested was the fact that that we could play some Pittsburgh Jewish geography. We knew people in this town. He had, it turned out, he said, been born in this town and came back every year to visit the graves of some of his relatives. He left here when he was 2 with his dad. So I went down to his bookstore in Wheaton, Maryland, and I loved him right away. He was such a nice man. He was a real, as they say, mensch. And not only did he rescue Torahs, he didn't take any money for this, by the way. Not only did he rescue Torah, he went everywhere, and he was the best storyteller I had ever met. He told me about a time that he was in the Ukraine, and he was sitting on a stoop in a local general store in a small town, and a farmer came up to him, and the farmer said, "My father gave me a map many years ago before he died, and he told me to keep this map until I saw a man with a little hat, a yarmulke, on the back of his head, a kippah. And when I saw this man, whenever I met such a man, I would offer him the map if he in return would give me $2,500 in gold. Well, Menachem thought back. He told this story brilliantly. I mean, he could mimic the words and the tone of the people he was talking about and quoting in dialogue. And sometimes he jumped up and he would demonstrate what it was that he was trying to say. Oh, I mean, I'm a storyteller. I am a writer who writes creative nonfiction. I love writing scenes and dialogue. It was really so exciting to me to see this guy who could do it better than me off the cuff. The guy was really great. And he was doing so many important things. He was rescuing these tourists that were desecrated and in terrible shape, taking them and repairing them and giving them to and tracking down the families and the congregations where they first were stolen from. What a guy. So I begged him to let me stay with him, immerse myself like I immersed myself with transplant patients and roboticists. I begged him to let me hang out with him. And he eventually agreed. And off and on for the next couple of years, I would travel to Wheaton, Maryland, and I would hang out at the Washington Jewish bookstore. That was what his bookstore was called. And I would listen to him as he negotiated for Torahs across the country. Periodically, he would disappear. Where he went, I do not know. It was a mystery. He would never tell me until he got back from wherever he was. And he had these Torahs, okay? But during that first year, I did a couple of things. I interviewed 30 or 40 people that he had helped over the years. And these were people who absolutely loved Menachem and appreciated so much what he had done for them. This was so exciting to me. I've been writing books for a long time, and my books have been pretty successful. But I thought I'm 70, close to 70 years old, and I wanted a book that would really make an impact, that would really, really be remembered. I wanted to have a literary triumph, and I thought this rabbi, Orthodox Hasidic rabbi, who was so nice and so influential, who sacrificed himself and spent tons of money, of his own money, to find Torahs for other people. This was going to be the book of my lifetime. And I am, okay, I say this, I am a failed Jew. That is to say, after my bar mitzvah, I couldn't take it anymore. I'm sorry. I just didn't want to learn Hebrew anymore. I didn't want to read from the Torah anymore. I was bar mitzvahed in an Orthodox synagogue because my grandparents were Orthodox, and that's what we sometimes have to do. So I un-Jewished myself, and I always felt really kind of guilty about it. But then I met Menachem. He was a hero. And he was not just Jewish, he was deeply Jewish, but he was also kind of a understanding Jewish man. For example, Hasidic rabbis won't go near women. They won't touch women, but in public anyway. That's what I mean. But they would say, the people that I interviewed, women especially, would say to me about Menachem, he will shake my hand. And that was a big deal. So Menachem and I hung out, and we had some really interesting adventures together in or near Washington, D.C., with leaders of the Arab world, the Muslim world, because he had found a cache of Torahs in the Baghdad Museum right after the conflict between us and Saddam. And he wanted to rescue there were 350 Torahs, he said, and he wanted to rescue those Torahs. And he wanted me to be his agent in Iraq, in Baghdad, as he made the Torahs kosher and gave them back to the museum and gave some of them to the people he knew, congregations and people who deserved Torahs. So we had some really exciting secret adventures. They're not that secret. They're in my book, but I'm not going to tell you what they were. And so, and I thought, as I said, I started going to Torah study groups around Pittsburgh. And I began reading the Torah or reading the Old Testament all over again. And I really thought, okay, you're 70. You've lost these friends. You've lost your mom. But I'm 70 years old. Maybe I can refine my religion and my culture. I got to tell you, I'm not going to tell you what happened next because then I give away everything in the book. But I got to tell you that my 2 years with Menachem were incredibly exciting. And I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about other people, Jewish people, non-Jewish people. But it was probably the first time, and maybe even the last time. I sure hope that it was the last time that I'll ever pull a shimmy, because I did big time. My Tony story is in the book, my last 8,000 days. My Menachem Torah hunter story is in the book. My mom is in the book. She was a pretty interesting character. And Pittsburgh heroes are in the book as well. Like some of you might remember the commuter bandit, or the man who jumped off the bridge from nowhere, or Nick Perry and the 666 Fix, which became a movie with John Travolta. So I've captured that moments in the book as well. But the moments I have captured more than anything else, and the moments that I hope resonate with you, is the fact that, well, for one thing, I've always been a very, at least outwardly, strong person. And I'm a great listener. I'm a professional listener. But I really don't talk much I don't take a deep dive into myself like I have taken deep dives into other people. But this time, my mom dead, my friends dead, my dream book pretty much dead. This time I thought it was time for me to kind of rejigger my life, to change it a little bit, to stop being the tough guy writer, the obsessed writer, and kind of reach out and try to shape for myself a new and friendlier and happier world, which I've done in this book, and which I really hope that other people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s will be able to see that even though you are aging, even though you are getting older, even though the public perceives you in a diminished way, that we need to not accept that kind of diminishedness. We need to be able to continue to fight as hard as we can to feel productive and to feel satisfied and to feel proud. We need to, literally, we need to stand up straight and be the people we want to be for as long as we have to live. My book, My Last 8,000 Days, An American Male in His 70s, will help you do that. And it'll help you laugh. And I hope it'll make you cry. And I hope you'll reach out to me and tell me after you read it what you think. So thanks very much. This has been such an honor, a great opportunity to make connections with the people in my city and the people in my neighborhood. Maybe I'll see you as I walk Walnut, something I do, as I said, maybe 6 or 10 times a day. So thanks. Thanks again to Pittsburgh Arts and Lectures, Carnegie Library. Be safe, be well.
Wow, Lee, thank you for taking us on that journey. You certainly have some great stories to share. I also wanted to let you know that we have quite an audience. And of course, we wish that we were together in the beautiful, historic Carnegie Library Lecture Hall. And we're here. We're here for you, Lee. You do have lots of friends and you have lots of fans. And you have lots of interested readers. And we're all here to celebrate the publication of your first memoir. Let's start with memoir. Vanity Fair has credited you, as you well know, as being the godfather behind creative nonfiction. Can you just educate us all about creative nonfiction? Can you talk about what it is to you and your role in bringing it into the world as a genre?
The best way to describe creative nonfiction. By the way, I'm really happy to be here and to talk with you, and I feel really greatly honored as a Pittsburgher to be part of the Arts and Lectures series. So thanks a lot. As I said to you before, um, uh, I'm pretty nervous talking to my friends in Pittsburgh. It's easier to talk to people in other parts of the country who don't know me so well. So thank you so much. And creative nonfiction, best way to describe that is true stories well told. And that's kind of a banner under the creative nonfiction logo of the magazine I started here in Pittsburgh, Creative Nonfiction. And essentially, you take what happened to you in your life in a memoir, and you stick to whatever truth you believe in, and you provide necessary facts to put the truth in context, but you write it with the freedom and the liberty of using all of the available literary techniques that the novelist has. And so it's all true to the best of your ability in memoir. And it's just your take, your personal journey from whatever area of your life you would like to capture. And then there's this other kind of creative nonfiction that is much more focused on reporting. And again, it's the same idea. So, as you know, I have been immersing myself in many exotic subjects for lots of years with organ transplant surgeons and roboticists and veterinarians and child psychiatrists. And I spent tons of time. When I say tons, I mean years of time trying to look into the worlds that other people inhabit and explain it and make it cinematic to my readers, using that same idea of literary techniques, dialogues, description, reflection that the fiction writer can use. And that's what creative nonfiction is. And that's why creative nonfiction has grown so quickly as a genre, because it breaks the rules in some respects. It opens stuff up to, especially to journalists who were stuck in a set of old-fashioned limited rules. And now the bubble has burst. And as long as we memoirists and reporters tell the truth and make sure that our facts are accurate and important, and they resonate with the readers, we have this genre that is the fastest growing genre in the publishing industry and in the academy.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying the difference between reporting and memoir, because I think I think a lot of us think first of memoir when we think of creative nonfiction. And you've turned to memoir now. So even though you've been thinking about aging and your own aging process for a very long time, as you've shared, what made you come to wanting to write memoir, and especially a memoir around the subject of aging?
Because aging has been a heavy weight on my shoulders for a long, long time. I have denied aging from the time my own aging, anybody else can age all they want, but my own aging from the time I was 40 onward. In fact, when I turned 40, I reached out to my family and my friends via telephone or email and asked them, implored them to not send me birthday cards, not send me any gifts, not call me up and wish me a happy day, because it wasn't a happy day with me. I wanted to just pretend that it was just like any other day in my life and just move forward with the life that I was living. And I did that for 30 years. And it became, I got to tell you, Stephanie, it became kind of lonely. And because there was a feeling of emptiness, but you know, sometimes you make a point to people, and it's such a strong point that you don't back down, even though you know you've done something that's kind of silly. But when my 70th year arrived, I mean, I was writing these books and teaching. I teach now at Arizona State University, and I was writing these books. But right through the beginning of my 70th year, the few months before, and then the many months, actually my 71st year, my two best friends died, one after another. One in a rundown on a dark highway late at night, another because of cancer. And 5 days before my 70th birthday, my mom, at 94 years, my mom, my best friend, died as well. And other things happened to me. I had a book that I've written about in 8,000 Days that I thought was going to add great light and spark, and help me capture a higher level in the literary world. And that book fell apart. And all of that happened. Other stuff happened as well. All of that happened when I was 70, and or in that 70th year. And then um, I felt really lonely. I mean, writers are lonely on. I have been sitting here. I'm talking to you, looking at my computer, and I've been looking into my computer, except for 2 trips to Starbucks, since 6 a.m. in the morning. I haven't talked to anyone, and except you and the baristas, and so writers live lonely lives in many respects. But we have our support systems, like I did. And then suddenly those support systems were gone. And I thought, I felt lost and lonely and empty. And I thought I really have to do something different to understand what it was in my life that has led me to this point where I may well be a successful writer, editor, and teacher, but I certainly wasn't a successful person in my life in any social way. So that was one reason I decided it was time to take a deep dive into myself. And the other reason, Stephanie, is what we've been talking about from the beginning. All my life, I've written 17 books. All my life, I have been deep diving into other people, and it takes a different kind of look at the world and to write about others. And I thought, you're 70, and you have this need, and you need to understand yourself. So you need maybe to try something different as a writer, to strengthen you, to get you to learn more about this craft that you have been pioneering your entire life. And so, for those two reasons, something new, something to give me more of a challenge, and for this idea of understanding myself a little bit more, and confronting this aging thing, which had been driving me crazy for so long, I decided, that's a long answer, but I decided to embark on this memoir.
Thank you for that, Lee, and thank you for your honesty in your writing. It is heartbreakingly honest. You take us into your darkness Um, and I'm going to end with this question because I've been doing, and also you also are so honest about the loneliness, which during the time of the pandemic is amplified for everyone. Um, and during this time, I've been thinking a lot about what Jung has said about going into the darkness, and especially this time in life, he feels this is the time to embrace the darkness. And so I feel like in many ways, your book is Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. You've gone deep into the darkness, you've shared brutally, honestly, and yet you emerge joyful, friendly. You talk about being friendly, open, connecting to people in your community. So I wondered if for your parting words, you might talk about that joyful emergence.
This is the happiest series of years in my life right now. Not that I've ever been incredibly unhappy. I had had a good life, but connecting, reconnecting, and connecting with new people have given me such pleasure and joy, not just in my head, not just the way I think, but I feel myself. It's the strangest thing, Stephanie, when I walk Walnut, which is something I do in my book a half dozen or a dozen times a day. I feel myself standing up straighter. I feel my mouth smiling and the wrinkles in my face smoothing out. I feel like now that I can be proud of myself on the outside and proud of myself on the inside at the same time. And it makes me feel so incredibly optimistic. So my book is called My Last 8,000 Days. And I figure that I am going to make the absolute most of every one of whatever 8,000 days I have left until they're all gone. And maybe even when they're all gone, there'll be another 8,000 following it.
Thank you, Lee. That's beautiful. Thank you for your book. Everyone, let's hear it in your own living rooms for our friend Lee Gutkind with his beautiful memoir, My Last 8,000 Days. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.